Hey everyone, before we get into this episode, I just wanted to let you know that this episode discusses a real life scenario involving death, biological and foster parent positions, and trauma. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Awkward Insurance, Super Nerds. Today is special, and let me tell you why. I've not had the opportunity to have many of the National Alliance faculty on the podcast, except maybe Nikki Sherrill, but I'm not even sure that she was faculty yet when we recorded her podcast about getting into cars with strangers, which is focused on ride sharing. When I envision having faculty on, just know that we are going to nerd or geek out and be weirdos on insurance for policy language. And for that, that's the reason why I am super excited. We have with us today Mr. Ted Kinney, and I am so excited because he got me razzed about some insurance language and he didn't know he was going to. And so I said, you have to come on the podcast. We have to talk about this. We have to get emotional and talk about insurance language at the same time because that's what you can do in insurance. So welcome to Awkward Insurance, Mr. Kinney. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. You couldn't find a more awkward nerd than me, so you hit the jackpot. I'm really glad to be here.
There are definitely a lot of awkward nerds out there in insurance land. I can promise you that. But I am so happy to have Mr. Kinney here with us today. Ted is the owner and president of Kinney Training and Consulting LLC, which specializes in providing quality insurance training programs to agencies and companies throughout this amazing United States. He also serves as the Director of Education for Technical Affairs for the Alabama Independent Insurance Agents in Birmingham, Alabama. He is a member of the national faculty for us here at the National Alliance, which is the Society of Certified Insurance Counselors, the American Insurance Marketing Society, CPIA, and the Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America, Ask the Expert Service. And he truly is an expert. I go to him when I have questions, and I value that he respects me too when he has questions. In this position, he is responsible for developing agent education programs and providing technical assistance to association members and to our National Alliance participants as well, which is why I'm so excited to have him here today because we're going to talk about everything that our education has to offer from his perspective. Ted, tell us why you got into education. If you want to, go ahead and start a little bit with your background and how that led you to education.
Sure. I started in the insurance business in 1973, right after I graduated from the Ohio State University. I graduated on Friday and then I had to cut my hair because I started working on Monday and my hair was about as long as Dustin's. So I had to cut my hair. And then I became an underwriter. I couldn't even spell insurance, but I was an underwriter. I worked for that company for a while. Then I went to another carrier as an underwriter and eventually got into marketing, became a field rep. And really, that's when I began my training because I would go into agents' offices and I would train the customer service reps on our company's products because I thought that if I wanted them to use us, they needed to understand. And so I would not only tell them the benefits of our products, I would also tell them that where our product maybe wasn't as good. I just acknowledged that products are different, and I really enjoyed that. And then I started teaching for an organization called the 1752 Club.
That sounds really exclusive.
Well, it really isn't. 1752, I believe, is based on the first insurance company in America, which was Ben Franklin involved with that. So it's a year. At that time, it was involved with the PIA, but it was an insurance marketing association for marketing reps. And PIA at that time didn't have an education department. So I started teaching licensing and courses and things like that. There was no continuing education back then. In a way, I think continuing education law was the worst thing that ever happened to education. It forced people into having to take courses instead of wanting to.
You
take
think it's
courses.
the worst? I think it's the best because without it, some people might just be kind of skirting around with.
Let me explain what I mean by that. I used to do topics, and I'd get 150 people in the class, and they were there because they wanted to be there. Now I get people in the class who want CE credit.
Because they have to be there. I see where you're going with this.
A lot of them don't even work with the products I'm teaching. They might be life insurance people taking a CGL class. So, I feel that it's not really the worst thing, but it does. I think anything that forces people into doing something rather than voluntarily doing something can be a problem.
I have a question for you on that. In terms of, I agree with you that when somebody is required to do something, sometimes they do it whether or not they want to. But with the CE that's out there, the National Alliance is a little bit of a differentiator. It's not just a mindless thing. So do you think that our participants might have a little bit of a different mindset that when they come to class, it's because they want a higher level learning of CE rather than just the ones that you can take and get done within a couple of hours?
Right. I mean, whenever I teach a CIC, I always say I'm preaching to the choir. I think that the CICs and the CISRs are the cream of the crop in our industry, and they are there for what we're talking about. But I also do some webinars where I get people that, you know, I'm not even sure that they're even there. I can't see them.
Right.
So yeah, we have that issue. But I do think that the CIC, I've been involved with the CIC program as a student. I started in 1978 and I got my designation in 1980. And I became a faculty member, I believe, in 1990 or 91. I can't remember. I believe it was 1990. I did my first CIC class. So I've been affiliated with the National Alliance for many, many years, and I've seen it go through a lot of
Mr. Kinney,
changes.
in 1990, I was 5 years old.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you rubbing that in. See, here's the deal, Dustin. I always think I'm 18 until I look in the mirror, and then I get really disappointed. And it's like I'm still 18 in my
I
body,
feel that
but
so much. Like, I still feel like it was just yesterday that I was in high school. There's no possible way. Okay, so I said that I went to Muffins with Mom with my son today. They had them fill out a questionnaire, and one of the questions was, "How old is your mom?" He wrote 50. I'm not 50. It's like, you can remember my 10-digit phone number and you can't remember the two numbers that I actually am. Oh my gosh, it hurt. It hurt just a little.
yeah, I get it. And you hurt me just a little bit.
I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna have to go back to therapy now and deal with that self-esteem thing that you did to me. So thank
We're
you
going to
very
need to
much.
invite Mac back onto the podcast to mediate now.
So I love CIC. I think that CIC is an amazing program, and I push it all the time when I'm talking to agents. And I teach CIC institutes. I teach all the casualty subjects and all the personal line subjects. I actually started out in personal lines and taught personal line subjects, and then the CGL. I started out teaching that. Now I teach all the casualty subjects, and mostly now I'm teaching rubles, which I really like. I really like rubles because when I'm teaching institutes, I have to be really aware of my time because the students are going to be tested, and so I can't really ramble off and go off into the weeds. I have to kind of stay on topic, and sometimes it makes it hard because I can't always answer questions that come up because I need to stay on time. Whereas with a ruble, I can wander around as much
You
as
can
I
get in the
want.
weeds on rubles. Before we get into all those different topic offerings, let's talk about which one is well, you said that the ruble is your favorite. Let's kind of talk about the differences of each of those right now. So you teach CISR and CIC or just CIC?
Both CISR and CIC.
Awesome. And I love that you started with personal lines. That's just kind of my baby. That's where my heart is. And I can't even pretend like I know anything about commercial lines. I'm about as commercial stupid as they come. But personal lines, I got your back on that one. So our CISR designations are really geared towards our customer service representatives, account managers, or the producers that have maybe been in the business maybe 0 to 3 years and they need to get their feet wet on what policy language is. Whereas CIC takes that a little bit further and we take some deeper dives into the exclusions. We kind of expand on how to fill in some coverage gaps, and it's a little bit more expansive than CIC. And then, Mr. Kenny, you started talking about rubles. Did you mention megas? I'm not sure if you mentioned megas or not. But our ruble courses, they're called our ruble graduate seminars. They are named after one of our founders, James K. Ruble. And those are the advanced learning topics that once you get your CIC and you're a dues paying member, which dues paying member gets you all kinds of benefits in terms of the free content that we have to offer, the online content that we have to offer, and then there's the newsletters that are out there. Of course, you can contact us anytime and pick our brains on anything and access any part of the network that we can get you connected with. But those rubles are for the higher level learning. Once you're done with your CIC, you don't want to keep repeating that all the time. You might, because maybe you missed, like me, every time I take the commercial casualties or whatever that are in the CIC, it's like I'm hearing it for the first time because it just goes over my head. So you might want to keep retaking those so that you kind of, get that foundation back if it's been a few years. But those rubles really take some of these topics that we can't expand on in the classroom because we don't have enough time. And they really take some deeper dives. And you're right, you can get in the weeds and you can go off on your tangents and you can pick your students or your participants' brains and ask them what their experiences in those areas are and kind of almost custom tailor that class to the class that's sitting there in front of you. And so that's what's really exciting about the rubles and the megas. All of those are 16-hour bundled type courses. You pick what you want to learn and you bundle them together for 16 hours of CE, and you really custom tailor your education for you. And that's where Mr. Kenny was talking about those. So of all of those, of the CISRs, of the CICs, the rubles, and the megas, which participants are your favorite? Which ones are the hungriest or the most engaging? Which ones do you really go, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to get into the classroom and talk to these folks right here?
I like to talk to people that are fairly new to the business because they're hungry. I think sometimes the longer we're in the business, we get kind of jaded and we think, I've done this for a long time. Basically tell me something I don't know, right? Where the younger people are hungry and they're new and they really gobble up that information. And I also get into really good discussions with people that have been CICs for years and years as well. And I have no problem when somebody tells me I'm wrong. I always say I could be wrong. And I will be honest with you, Dustin, I think I probably learn as much as my students when I teach. I get a lot of my examples from students. I'm not a frontline insurance agent. I have been, but it's been years. So I'm not on the firing line, as they say. And I learn an awful lot from the agents in that class. And so I always say I'm speaking to my peers. I am an insurance person, talk to insurance people. And I always say that there are probably people in here that'll know a lot more than I do. And so it's great. I mean, I think it's that exchange of information, especially in rubles, that is so important. I don't want to come off as some kind of know-it-all, standing above everybody else and talking down to them. I'm an equal. I'm no I'm no different. It's just that I teach. That's all. That's the biggest difference. But I do love it. I love discussion. And I'll be honest with you, Dustin. I don't think I've ever finished one of my topics in a ruble. I just assume that I won't get
Yeah.
through it because we go off. We sometimes talk about the really important stuff like rock and roll bands from the 80s, things like that.
Now we're gonna have to get Jay Williams in here because he was in a rock and roll
Yeah.
band. He could go off on a tangent about that too.
A lot of the faculty members have rock and roll backgrounds if you
Isn't
really
that
do it.
crazy how everybody thinks like in insurance, if you tell somebody that you're in insurance or you're an insurance agent, they probably think that you're the most boring and stuffy person. But everybody that's kind of like seasoned in this environment right now, they came out of the 70s. The 70s were a crazy freaking time. I don't think there's any part of my life. I mean, there's been a lot of social like awareness craziness, but the 70s are there's nothing like the
The
70s.
70s is where a lot of the stuff, good and bad, started.
So you teach so many different topics, and as an academic director here, I get to review the topics that not only that we teach in terms of our CISR and our CIC, I get to be intimately involved with developing those and revising those. But you, as faculty, you get the opportunity as well to submit topics that are really of interest to you, where your knowledge really shines, where your expertise comes through. And I got the opportunity to take a look at one of is it a mega or a ruble? I can't remember which one it was.
Well, I think it began with the Mega, and that's where I've taught it so far. I've never taught it at Aruba
Right.
yet.
So, and it's called Getting Answers to Personal Auto. Is that the title that you came up with?
Either getting answers or finding answers. I forget. I think the title
Finding
changed.
Answers to the Personal Auto. And you've got another one that's fairly similar, Finding Answers in Homeowners or to Personal Residential or something like that. So I'm taking a look at your design program. And that's the fun part of being faculty is that, yes, while you teach some of the curriculum, that for us, it kind of is rooted in ISO. And that's the hard part to get fun with is when you have to stick to the ISO language. And we know that that's not how all of the carriers work. But the extra fun part for the faculty is when we come to you guys and we're like, hey, we need some really fun and interesting topics for the rubles and the megas, stuff that people really want to get, down and dirty in and dig into. And so you've got this finding answers in the personal auto and the concept. Tell us about the concept of that and like the experience that you really want your participants to get out of that particular course.
Well, I think the concept is really that we have odd claim situation. I mean, when we have natural, normal claim situation where somebody ran into somebody else, I mean, how exciting is that? We know where that's going to go, but we come up with really bizarre situations in this business. And some of the topics that I use come from the Ask the Expert service because we get a lot of questions from agents that have real bizarre claims. And those are the fun ones, and those are the ones. And I always tell my classes, we're always teaching from ISO because those are sort of the boilerplate policies of our industry. And then I follow that up with, however, nobody uses ISO.
Exactly.
So we kind of use ISO as a starting point, but I acknowledge that, and I always say, when you're looking at a question, any question, you have to look at the policy you sold. You can't look at an ISO
Absolutely.
policy. I always say, you can change the meaning of a policy by changing one word. And so you have to be really careful. I work with a lot of independent agents who might have 20 or 30 different personal
You
auto
can
carriers.
change the meaning of coverage with just a comma or a
Absolutely.
period. It doesn't even have to be a word.
Yeah. Exactly, comma, semicolon, and versus or, things of that nature. And one of the things I've done in my career for a little while as I was in product development, where we would develop. I was there when we developed our personal auto policy, and so we took the ISO policy and then started changing it. So what we ended up with a ISO-based proprietary form. But it wasn't where it was the same as ISO that was the issue. It was where it was different. So when I taught our agents that were using our product, I pointed out how it was different from ISO.
That's amazing.
And I said, in some areas it's better, in some areas you got to be careful.
Yeah, I think that's a really essential skill too. But what I really loved about this topic that you have, the finding answers to the personal auto, is the format. We go in and we start talking from the policy top down and we explain what this means and CISR and CIC, and we explain what this sentence means and what this exclusion means. But that's not how it happens in an agency. I was in an agency for almost 15 years. And how it happens in an agency is you pick up the phone and say, this is Dustin with ABC Insurance. How can I help you? And they immediately start going into, they were in the car line at school or they were picking up Arby's for their mom who's sick at home. And they give you all of these miscellaneous details. And somewhere embedded in there is an actual coverage question. You just have to figure out how to filter through it. And that's what I love about the way you are working on developing this course is you're working on developing it in a backwards way, kind of. You're starting with what the client says first. This is the claim scenario. Now let's go to the policy and figure out where we're going to find the answers to this instead of going to the policy and trying to apply it to a claim scenario, which is how we do it in CIC and CISR. And so I got the opportunity to look at 24 different claim situations that you have prepared for this particular course. That's a lot. And some of them, I mean, what really makes these claim scenarios useful is not only are they out of the ordinary, but there's chances that you're going to have somebody in that classroom that claim scenario is either something that they've experienced personally, something that they've experienced professionally, or something that they'll go, "Oh my God, I never thought about that." One of them that started with me was, I'm going to read it from the topic here. Our insured son was asked by a neighbor to take the neighbor's car to a car wash. While driving that car to the car wash, the son ran into another vehicle, heavily damaging both cars. Now, it's not like specifically what I have experience with, but what the car wash is what got me. So that's what perked my interest because I myself have taken a car to a car wash. The next one that really struck me, that really got me talking with you and just seeing just how interesting these claims can get. And these are ones that somebody might go, I never thought about that before, had to deal with foster parents. And so, of course, it was another thing that triggered me, just like car wash triggered me. The foster thing triggered me because I have history as a foster parent and I'm currently an adoptive parent. So I'm going to read this one too. Our personal auto policy insured was a foster child who was killed in an auto accident caused by a hit and run driver. There were no witnesses. His foster parents made a claim under the uninsured motorist coverage of their personal auto policy. So we're using the UIN or the coverage under the personal auto policy here. There was a delay in the payment, and when you contacted the adjuster, he said that he was trying to locate the birth mother. He said the foster parents were not entitled to collect the benefits, but the birth mother could. And you thought it was wrong initially. So walk me through that particular claim scenario, because when I asked you about this one, you said that this was a real live like claim that you had. So it's one that you were very intimately involved with. Walk us through that one.
Sure. Well, it began with a little boy, and I think he was getting off the school bus. I
Oh,
don't
God
remember. I
bless people. If
forget.
you don't stop at the school buses when they're little stop signs, you deserve every ticket that somebody could ever write you.
Yeah. So he was getting off the bus, and I think he was going to get the mail or something out of the mailbox. And he was a little guy. I think he was only 5 or 6 years old, maybe 6 years old. And as he was going to the mailbox, he got hit by a driver who didn't stop, kept going, what we would call a hit and run driver. And sadly, he was killed. Okay. So I turned the claim in to the foster parents' auto policy, and I wrote the auto policy for them, and it had coverage. So I turned it in. I mean, one of the first things we have to look at with a claim is, was the person struck by a vehicle that meets the definition of uninsured motor vehicle? And one of the definitions is a unidentified hit and run. So obviously, the boy was struck by an uninsured motor vehicle. Also, obviously, according to the policy, he was considered a family member, because if you look at the definition of family member, it includes a ward or a foster child, anyone related to the insured by blood, marriage, or adoption who's a resident of the household. And then it says including a ward or a foster child. So he was an insured under the uninsured motor. So that's fine. So I turned it in expecting to get, uh, the check would be coming any day now, right? And it wasn't happening. There was a real long gap between the time I turned it in. And I called the adjuster and I said, "Hey, I don't understand why this isn't getting settled. What's the big deal?" And he said, "Well, I have to find the birth mother." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because she's the birth mother." So we looked at the definition of insured under the uninsured motorist, and it says that you or a family member are covered, if you're struck by an uninsured motor vehicle. The passengers in your car are insured under uninsured motorist coverage as well. And then there's a third one that says anyone legally entitled because of injury to another
Right.
insured is an insured. So he finally located the birth mother. Now, here's the problem. You would think that the foster parents who bought the coverage would benefit from
Right.
the coverage. They
Right.
didn't, because they were not legally entitled to recover. They weren't the birth parents. They really weren't. When we call them foster parents, that's really not true. They're not really a
Right.
parent. their custodian, right? But we call them foster parents. So the adjuster says, well, we don't give them anything. And of course, the little boy was gone, so he couldn't collect anything as the as the insured. But the mother, the birth mother, he finally located the birth mother, and I don't mean to be making any judgments here, but she was a drug addict, which was one of the reasons why the boy was placed in the foster home in the
Sure.
first place, because she was kind of
Right.
neglecting him because she was too busy finding drugs and being high, right? So he did finally locate that person, and she got a check for $500,000. And I said, "That's not fair.
Yeah.
This isn't fair at all because, the poor little boy can't collect it because he's gone. The foster parents don't get to collect it because they aren't legally entitled. Now you're saying this drug addicted woman is going to get the benefits?" I said, "That's not
Right.
fair." And I remember what the adjuster said. He said, "Don't confuse fair with
Don't
legal."
confuse fair with legal.
He said, "I don't think it's fair either, but she is legally entitled to recover because she never gave up her rights as a parent. She still had rights as a parent. This was a temporary custody
Hmm.
situation. So she could have gone off to rehab and gotten
Exactly.
sober and all that and gotten the
Yeah.
child back, right?"
Let me ask, how did your insureds feel about the settlement?
Well, I don't think they didn't feel so bad that they didn't collect anything. They understood. We explained why, and they understood it. They were upset that the mother got it
Mm,
though, because they said, "You know what? This mother never provided any care, nurturing, anything for this boy, and we have been doing that for that
right.
boy, okay? And we don't think she deserves the payment."
Yeah.
And of course, I said, "I don't think so either." And the adjuster said, "I don't think so either." But the fact of the matter is, anyone legally entitled to recover isn't insured, and she was legally entitled to
Yeah.
recover. So, end of discussion.
Absolutely. So I have that policy language pulled up from the ISO perspective. And it's, again, it's Part C, uninsured motorist coverage. And it goes into insured because each part of the policy does have a varying definition of insured at times. And it can even be changed by the state supplements that are added to those policies. But for ISO, it says an insured in this part means, and this we're going to skip down to number three, any person for damages that that person is entitled to recover because of bodily injury to which this coverage applies, that's coverage, sustained by a person described in one or two, and that's the you or the family member or the other person occupying a your covered auto. So, what I heard when I saw this case, I immediately sent you back an email saying, I love this concept. I love this course. I actually want to take it myself. I want to see those backward steps because that's what I loved when I got the calls from clients. And like I said, they would start with, I was in the car line or, I was picking up Arby's for Aunt Sue who's not feeling well. And this is what happened. And it usually ends with, do I have coverage or am I covered or what do I do next? And you want to try, initially, there's always a level of panic in me like, oh my God, did I write the right coverage? I always did. But you go through that process first and you have to get past that first. And then you start helping them, like you get them through the claim and you start talking to them about their coverage. And so when I read this one, I immediately sent you an email back and was like, I want to know more about that one, that foster one. And you said it was one that you had experienced. And then I saw, and you and I kind of went back and forth in email several times, and you explained your position very eloquently, and that you did think that it wasn't fair, that the biological mother had gotten the money. And so I'm going to be honest, I was like, ooh, how dare you? Like, how could you feel that way? Like, this woman, I understand she's a drug addict. I understand that she's been failing at being a parent, and that's most likely because she herself was failed as a child by her parent. It's a cycle of trauma that occurs. But what happens from my perspective as a foster parent, and okay, I'm going to start with this. I went into foster parenting we went into adoption first. We didn't want to be foster parents, but then when we heard that it was going to take a while to be matched with a child, that I was like, we've already got this room. You have to have a room ready in order for an adoptive child to be considered for your home, right? So I was like, okay, well, we've got this room. We're not doing anything with it. Why can't we, provide some immediate fostering? And it was in our state, they don't want you to be a foster parent and an adoptive parent at the same time. There's some conflicts of interest there. And I can go into that a little bit as far as like sometimes foster parents kind of become a little adversarial because they're bleeding hearts for kids. Who's not, right? We want to take care of kids and we've got a great home to provide, but sometimes that can clash with the case plan that biological parents are set up on. They need to be given a chance. They weren't set up with the right tools to succeed in life. And that's what the foster system is supposed to do. I really don't want to get comments on the podcast about how that's not what the foster care system does, because I understand that aspect. I really do. That there are failures system wide in the foster care system. But what it's supposed to do is give that parent some resources to try and regain the custody of their child, to be a better parent, to show them how they can succeed at life. And sometimes foster parents become a little adversarial to that because they want to protect the child, and rightfully so. We want to protect children, no matter if it's a child that we've just met for the first time or one that's been in our house for 6 months and you're the one that's providing the care for that. Um, but the fact of the matter is that biological parent's rights had not yet been terminated, or she had not signed them over. And yes, she was a drug addict, and it's very possible that that large sum of money could have gone to her. But there's no knowing whether or not she was actually on the right track. She just needed a couple more pushes by the caseworker or whatever, and she could have maintained that relationship with her child, and now she's lost that opportunity at no fault of the foster parents or anything else. But that's exactly what these policies are here for. And I saw something this morning that kind of chimes into this. It was a video posted by Bradley Flowers. He's with Portal Insurance in Alabama, and he is a podcaster on the insurance guys, and he puts out a ton of content for not only agents but clients as well to kind of help understand their coverage. And he was making the argument. I think he said he was going to play the devil's advocate or something like that, or unpopular opinion, I think is what he said. People will decline higher limits of liability because if they get sued, they don't want the other person to, get all the money. And this kind of mentality it doesn't exactly match this claim situation, but it kind of seeps into that. And his response to that was, if you're at fault for injuring somebody, wouldn't you want to try and make that right as an apology, kind of? Wouldn't you want them to have the money that they need in order to get back on their feet because you're the one that injured them? It's kind of the same for this thing. And in terms of the foster parent, that child never has a chance to go back to their biological parent. That biological parent never has a chance to find that they could have put in the effort to gain their child back, because now they've lost that relationship and they were under your care, and it's not your fault. Yes, I understand. But let's think about other people for a minute. Don't you want your coverage to be able to benefit that foster child's loss of life, to be able to benefit that biological parent who was obviously already struggling with whatever demon she had for her drug use? This is going to be an even bigger demon. The guilt that foster parent, or that biological parent, is going to carry around, that number one, they got their child taken away in the first place because they weren't providing care. But now the guilt of, if I had just taken care of them, this might not have ever happened. My child will be alive. That demon that they're going to carry around with them now, that deserves an effort of compensation, if you will, because now they're going to have to hopefully get all the therapy that they need to help deal with that. And so that kind of struck me that this is exactly what this is trying to do. Yes, what's fair is not always, or what's legal is not always what's fair. It's the same with foster parents. When that child gets reconnected to go back to the biological parent, this nice 2,800 square foot home that I live in, with a beautiful refrigerator, with working appliances, with heat and air, a fully stocked pantry, is a great way to raise a child. That biological parent is most likely on what is traditionally known as food stamps. And so they're going maybe once a month to go and get what they need for that month with the food stamps. Their pantry isn't always stocked. And so that foster parent will go, this is a better place for them to be. They should be here, not with them. But I advocate for, it takes all types to make the world go round. It takes all types to make the world go round. the child in that situation, would it be better for them to be in a stable home? Absolutely it would be. But the future of their story is not yet written, and they can use their struggles and their triumphs to speak about their past and how they overcame it. Just because they came from a bad background, a bad upbringing, doesn't mean that they can't make something of themselves. And that's why I say it takes all kinds to make the world go round. There are tons of stories out there of rags to riches, right? There are tons of stories out there of abuse to healing, and now you're a productive member of society. And this just kind of got me, and I wanted to kind of tie the two together about my experiences as a foster and adoptive parent, and how this personal auto policy language came out right in front of my face because of a claim scenario that you're presenting in one of these courses. And that's what's so unique about these faculty designed courses, is you're not just thinking about the coverage, you're not just thinking about how can I make this fun. You're working to connect this in ways that somebody sitting in your class will go, oh my gosh, I never thought about that before. Oh my gosh, I need to be a little bit more objective. I see a smile on your face. What's the smile for?
Well, I have a PS or a postscript or a now the rest of the story like Paul Harvey used to do, right? Anybody remember Paul Harvey? That probably dates me a little bit. But
I'm gonna go Google it real quick.
since since that back in the old days, since I did have judgment about the mom, but since that time, in fact, in the last couple of years, I became a certified chemical dependency counselor.
Amazing.
I have that credential, and I have seen a lot of severely addicted addicts and
Yeah.
alcoholics recover and become very, very important members of society. And so I judged her harshly, and I don't know what she did with that money. She may have used that money to go into a retreatment
Yeah.
program. I don't know.
Hopefully.
So it was wrong for me to judge her, but yeah, it's very possible she could have become a very good mother, and I acknowledge that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important for anybody to hear. And I hope that maybe when you teach this course, if that particular claim scenario does come up, because you had 24 amazing examples. And so, like you said, you might not be able to get to all of them. But in the same way that we're teaching them about insurance, maybe there's a tone of compassion in there. Maybe there's a tone of, it's not uncommon for people to get stuck in their prickly feelings and to feel very protective of the child and even the foster family, because that's a terrible loss to go through. But it's okay to experience and acknowledge the loss that the other party goes through, even if they're just not in the right place in life. And so, I mean, you can make so much out of that course. And I think that's what makes me excited about insurance and insurance education in particular, is because insurance is personal. And that's why I love personal lines, because it literally has the word personal in it. Insurance is personal. And as agents, as account managers, we get to take those phone calls and we can make somebody's day better. We can just be supportive of somebody, or we can be their advisor and help them make a better choice in some ways. And I think that goes back to, and I hate to make this part so personal, but it goes back to another phrase that I like to use is, you never know when you're going to be that one person. Like, you can be an insurance agent and you take that phone call about a claim, but there might be just one thing that you say that triggers that person to go, oh my gosh, I need to change something. I need to do something different. Oh my gosh, they're right. Oh, I'd really like to be this person's friend. And it changes the trajectory and the course of their life, just because of that one situation. And I would hate to say that this particular claim, um, well, not that I would hate to. Actually, I would hope that this particular claim changed the trajectory of the bio parent's life in such a sad and profound way that they lost something so big. But you just never know when you're going to be that one person in any kind of way, in any kind of situation. And you, as a faculty member, you get to do that every time you step into a classroom. You might not be active in the agent world in terms of taking the phone calls anymore, but you are in the ask the expert, situation. You can make that one difference in that agent's life to, instead of taking the CE just because they have to take the CE, they now want to be invested in their career and their education. And that's amazing. And even the ones that are on the webinar that you think are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, okay, acknowledge that, but then also acknowledge that you could be the one that changes their perspective about how they do their CE. So, and that's amazing. And I love that. And I thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to have this conversation with me. I know we were both a little nervous about the topic at hand, especially the particular claim that we wanted to get into. I am having so much fun getting to know our faculty members in the way that I feel like I'm getting to know you. And every time I get on the phone with you, I actually get really excited about it. So thank you so much for having the conversation with me today, Mr. Kinney. Is there anything else that you would like to say as we close out our conversation?
No, I think I would just say I really appreciate you bringing me on here, and I always love talking to you, Dustin, and we've had some good conversation, and you've taught me some stuff too, and just shows that we never our education never ends, and I think with CIC our education definitely never ends, and we want to be the best in our business that we can be, and I think all the programs the National Alliance has makes us better at what we do. And so I just feel, I really feel blessed that I'm allowed to be a faculty member, that I'm allowed to meet with agents and talk to them and learn from them. So it's sort of a win-win. As I hate that phrase, it's so trite, but it is a win-win because I get as much out of it as they do.
Yeah.
And just really glad to be here.
Thank you so much for that. And we feel blessed to have you as one of our faculty members as well. And I can't wait to see the end product of this particular course and see it in action in one of our mega seminars. Thanks again for being here. And thanks again for listening. Toodles. Thanks for hanging around and listening to another awkward conversation in insurance. Stay tuned for new episodes from Awkward Insurance wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to check out the National Alliance on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or at scic.com. Now go forth and be awkward. Toodles!